Welcome to The Shrewdness. We are so excited about this baseball-focused endeavor. As teased in prior episodes, we are doing 15 to 20-minute primers for each MLB team to prepare you for this 2025 season, to help you with your fantasy baseball drafts and future bets, or simply to improve your knowledge as the season begins. From the projected starters to the prospects, we will touch it all and give our shrewd takes on the key to their success. So sit back, take some notes, and enjoy the show.
Hello, Shrewdness fans. Welcome from Oklahoma. And Dex, I think, is on the East Coast. We're both traveling this week, but still wanted to bring you a show this week. Tonight's episode is a continuation of our Major League Baseball 2025 primers. And tonight's episode is going to be on the Chicago Cubs. Dex is going to introduce our guests, and we will get into the show. Over to you, Dex.
All right. Thanks, Prue. So very excited tonight. So we are doing the Chicago Cubs. I know I have a lot of Cubs fans waiting for this episode, so I wanted to bring them something special. So I went out and I dug deep, and I am so pumped to be able to bring to you a uber super Cubs fan, even though he's from Minnesota or lives in Minnesota. But his part-time gig is probably the best part-time gig in the history of the world, and I would do it in a heartbeat. But I promise you, you're not going to get it from Tim, because he's never going to give it up until he dies. He's going to be 88 years old in that damn booth. So Tim Sheridan is joining us tonight to be our Cubs guest. And he, if you've ever been to Sloan Park or Hohokam Park back before they moved to Sloan Park, is the one announcing the Cubs batters. So he's a field announcer. So, Tim, introduce yourself a little bit, how you got that gig, how you came to love the Cubs living in Minnesota.
Well, yeah, I have to go back to Minnesota to start this story. And, of course, I did grow up as a Twins fan. You know, that's kind of mandatory when you grow up in Minnesota. But my parents decided that they wanted to possibly not live someplace as cold as Minnesota. So they looked at some options, and Arizona was one of those options. And as it was, we moved to Arizona after my sophomore year of high school. So I finished my final 2 years of high school here in Arizona, where I'm at right now, obviously, since I'm in the middle of the spring training season, although, like we were talking earlier before we were on air, the Cubs just left to Japan yesterday, which is a whole nother story we'll get into. But so I went to Mesa Community College after I graduated, and then someone came into a radio and TV announcing class that I had. They asked, who wants to help out at Chicago Cubs spring training? And me. Exactly. Basically based on quick reflexes and just the love of baseball. Yeah. Myself and one other student went over there that spring, which happened to be 1984, which was a pretty pivotal year for the Cubs.
Good year right there.
Yep, exactly.
Played the Padres that year, right?
Uh-huh. And then we got to the stadium, which was the old Hohokam. It was the old Hohokam Park where I started. So basically we got over to this old Hohokam Park, the two of us, and they said, one or both of you are going to share doing the public address announcing. And we kind of looked at each other. You mean like to the whole crowd? And like, yeah, that's what part of your job. The other one, be an assistant, answer phones, be a spotter, all that. So it was kind of like, just swim or sink. And so obviously I'm still there doing it. We kind of shared the duties, the two of us, for about 2 seasons. And then he got involved in some horse racing down in Tucson. And we were going to share for the third spring. And then he called. He's like, I can't make it up there. It's, a couple hours away, blah, blah, blah. He's like, it's yours if you want it. And oddly enough, I'm still doing this really cool part-time gig. I like to say that I go to spring break. I've never stopped going.
You do.
I'm not in college anymore, but I keep going on the spring break every year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's better than spring break. You get paid to be there. That's even better.
I know. I still got to pinch myself on that one, because it's like you're paying me to go to a baseball game. Okay.
So,
absolutely.
So I know a guy that worked on the grounds crews for the Royals, and I thought that was an awesome gig. But I think you take the cake there, Tim.
Yeah,
it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty special. I feel extremely lucky, and just like I say, to be doing this all these years later, as I would have never imagined, but it's been fantastic.
Yeah.
And I want to hit up a little bit because while we couldn't make it out there this year, you've got a new venture going on. Can you highlight that? So in case there's anybody going to the end of spring training out there, maybe they can hook you up.
Yeah, exactly. Combining two of my favorite things: breweries, beer, and baseball. Well, that's three things, but breweries and beer go together. So,
They do kind of go together. That's kind of one. We'll go
it's
with
a
it.
brewery and baseball tour. So essentially what the tour does is it's not going to a game per se, because, if you got the game day experience going on, that's going to take up the bulk of your time. That's a
It does,
three
yep.
plus, a couple hours on each side. That's a 5 hour, experience. Where the brewery tour, basically we get together and we go to three different breweries, local breweries here in Mesa that are award-winning breweries. And then between those breweries, I take fans to different baseball historical and baseball sites here in Arizona, which didn't have a team,
Nice.
until relatively modern era. But spring training had been going on, and teams that barnstormed through here. Actually, the first time that a team barnstormed through here was the Chicago White Stockings in 1909. So there is a long
Really?
history of baseball in Arizona. Yeah, they played in Yuma,
Wow.
way out, in the corner of Arizona against the town team of Yuma. They'll beat the crap out of them, but that's not
Wow.
surprising. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think Yuma might have been outmatched on that game.
Exactly. So we go through and we have some great beer, talk baseball, and it's kind of wide open. It's basically about having fun and getting the baseball and the breweries out and kind of in front and center and enjoying that. And it ends up being about a 4 hour journey.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, that's fantastic. We'll let you kind of plug that at the end. We'll put that in the links to the show here too, because that sounds pretty awesome. And we are absolutely going to partake in that next year when we get down to Arizona. All right, so let's jump in to this year, our preview for the Cubs. I always like starting, if you've been watching the previous episodes, with the prior year, just so we know where are we coming from, where are we at, and where do we think we're going with this team. So last year, if we look at the fan graphs, they were projected for 82 wins. Pacoda had them for 80. In actuality, they finished with 83, so they did outperform, if you want to call it outperforming. When I look at it, it's kind of interesting. So they finished, is it tied for second or tied for third? How do you want to put it? So they tied 10 games behind Milwaukee last year.
That sounds
I don't know who actually won the tiebreaker, but since it's with St. Louis, I was going to give you the opportunity to say, no, they were second. They won the tiebreaker. So they tied with St. Louis for second or third, however you want to put it, 10 games behind Milwaukee. That's the main part. Main takeaway is that. So this year, the way we're looking at it is Fangraph has them 2 wins more. They have the Pacoda's up to 90, so 10 wins more on Pacoda. And I think the over-under is 85.5. If that, I don't know if that's changed, but I think that's still accurate. So 1 game more for Vegas. So they're kind of all over the map. So we got 84, 85, that's fine, but at 90 for Pacoda. So they're seeing something. And when you look at the offseason moves, and after I looked at this team, we'll kind of take that at the end. But I think this team, I think they're going to be pretty darn good. And so I'm going to go through kind of the lineup first, and then I'm going to kind of give my take, and then we're going to see what Tim thinks, see what Prue thinks. We're going to kind of go through this stuff. So quickly, the payroll this year, if is to be believed, is $183 million. But, man, it seems like it's more than that. But maybe it's not. So the top of their lineup, they start with Ian Happ, and then Kyle Tucker, Seiya Suzuki, Michael Busch, Dansby Swanson, Nico Horner, Pete Crow Armstrong, Matt Shaw projected, and then Miguel Amaya. So this is kind of Fangraphs projected, and Tim may have more insight if that's actually going to be a real lineup or not. But regardless, we can kind of talk about the players. So we'll start off with Ian Happ, and just kind of going back to last year's stats so we know where he was at. He's a switch hitter, 30 years old, slotted for left field. He had a 3.9 WAR last year, which is pretty darn solid. The average was 243, on base 341, OPS 782, and he hit 25 home runs, 86 RBIs, and even swiped 13 bags for you. So this guy, when I see Ian Happ, and especially from a fantasy perspective, he is remarkably consistent. Year after year, He is just always there doing what, I don't know, just doing what he does. So 3 Gold Gloves in a row. So he even brings it defensively. All-Star in 22. So he wasn't All-Star last year, but he has been an All-Star appearance. And last year, surprisingly, he went up 5 points in all these categories: a fly ball percentage, pull percentage, hard hit percentage. So that's not a bad thing at all. So when you're looking at a hitter to, again, not hitting the ground balls and double plays and everything else, this is kind of what we're looking at. So, Tim, what is your take on Ian Happ? How do you think he's going to do this year, and kind of what do you think of him as a ball player?
Ian he's kind of a glue type player that I think he's been around longer than some of the other players on the team. And I think people looked at him as a leader. He's developed into that. Again, you talk about his defense out there, and I've seen it this spring. He has made some amazing plays already, like one after another. It's like, okay, he's in rare, fine form. Regular season, like, just don't get hurt. Let's save some of that for the regular season, because these games don't technically matter. And like say, I think he's developing, a little bit more pop in that bat too, with getting a little more launch angle and that type of thing, which is good to see, because I think he can be a decent power hitter. But I just really like him. I think he's rounded. I wasn't sure, a number of years ago when he was a younger player, because these younger players tend to have, they're uneven in different areas, and it takes them some time to kind of find themselves. And I think he's really found himself, and they like him up at the top of the lineup there. And I'm very happy with Ian Happ out there in left field and at the top of the lineup. Yeah, and
another kind of fun stat I saw on him was that in left field, since we're talking about, he has the most putouts and assists in the last 2 years from anyone else, period. That's amazing.
Now that's a good stat. I did not know that. That's fantastic to hear.
I had no clue. Prue, what do you know of Ian Happ? You like having him on the squad up top? I think he's pretty darn good.
Yeah, I mean, the first thing that jumped out at me was his age, plus the stat you just gave about his hard hit percentage going up. We've talked on multiple episodes about 27 is kind of the prime age of a baseball player. And, leading up to that, they're still learning. And then past 27, they start losing some of their speed, some of their power, that kind of thing. Your body just can't last forever. So it's very impressive that his hard hit percentage went up 5 points from, as a 30-year-old. So that is a good, encouraging sign from a guy that's, even if he's a leadoff hitter, if he's got a power stroke in there too, that's a bonus.
Yeah, I feel like the modern day leadoff hitters also changed roles. They are not just supposed to get on base and steal base and move over on a bunt. They're supposed to kind of drive themselves in half the time too. And I think he is definitely in that mold. Walk, right? I mean, 341 on base. That's 100 points over his average. So he's certainly seeing pitches, and that's what you want out of your leadoff guy.
Yep.
So I think he's pretty darn good. Number 2, this is their big offseason trade with Houston. And I know, Tim, you're pumped to see this dude in the lineup all of a sudden. Even though you lost Cody Bellinger, we'll talk about that later. But Kyle Tucker's a damn good replacement. So left-handed hitter coming up from Houston in his prime, 28 years old, right fielder, 4.7 WAR last year for Houston, 289 average, 408 on base, which is stupid. But don't wait, 993 OPS, which is even more stupid. 23 home runs, 49 RBIs, 11 stolen bases. You're like, well, that doesn't sound like very much. All that other stuff sounded good, Dex. Why did all that other stuff go down? He did all that in 78 games. 78 games, 23, 49, 11 in that stat line. He fractured his shin, so that's not good, but he's in camp doing great. He's a free agent next year. So that being said, for the Cubs, they're kind of like, we need this year to be really good, because next year they may or may not be the one that retains his services afterwards. So unless he signs something in the last day or two that I missed, they have a 3-time All-Star, Silver Slugger, Gold Glove. That's their dude for only 1 year. Tim, what do you think of Kyle Tucker and how he's going to fit into this Chicago Cubs lineup?
Well, Kyle Tucker has, from what I can tell and from what I've heard, has fit in like great in the clubhouse. You cannot put any real relevance on spring training stats because they don't mean a lot. He just got like his first hit of the spring only a game or two ago, but the guy is a professional. He's been there, he's done it. So you don't worry about that. He could be working on different things in his swing and that type of thing that we really have no idea about. And being the public address announcer, I'm not like a beat writer, so I don't have access to go down the field and, hang out and like talk to coaches and, barge
what you
into the
working on,
locker room
Kyle?
and,
How come you're not getting any hits, Kyle?
What's up? Anyhow, but no, so he's going to come around. He
always does,
and he did these last couple games. In fact, I think his first hit was a home run, which seems appropriate.
Sounds about right.
Yeah,
I think that one hit the berm out there, didn't it?
Yep. And I just think that he's also like a steadying presence of a guy who's been around the league. He's shown that his talent. Coming to a brand new team, the Cubs knew they needed a little something again, because we talk about Bellinger and some things that were subtracted from the Cubs. So
the left-handed power bat in the outfield.
Exactly. So I think it's just like a perfect match. What happens with this whole 1 year deal, I'm not sure, and I guess we just have to kind of wait and see on how that all plays out. But yeah, he's a great player to have for the Cubs, and I was surprised that they end up being able to pull the trigger and make that move.
Absolutely. So if he has the year that we all think he will probably have in his prime, when he's a freaking beast, especially at Wrigley Field in the summertime where balls fly out, do you think they are going to actively go after him, try and sign him? I don't know. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're trying to do an extension right now, but is this someone you think they will try and keep on this and not just make it a 1 year rental trade? Okay. They gave up some capital to get him.
This is kind of a sore spot with Cubs fans, in particular with the Ricketts, the owners of the team, whether they're really willing to pay the money and be a big market team like
which
the Yankees
they totally
or Dodgers,
can be
when they are a big market, Chicago, and they have the resources. But Tom Rickett, the chairman, he's said certain things that have somewhat gotten fans not too happy about, like, we got to try and, balance the books. I mean, hold on. This is a baseball team. We don't care about balancing books. We want a championship, so.
Yeah, tell that to the Dodgers about balancing books.
Yeah, exactly. They just we'll just keep loading up. We don't care. We'll pay that.
That's because their city has two teams. They must be a bigger city. They carry two teams. Oh, wait. Chicago does too.
Exactly.
Stop trying to tell me this small market crap.
So to answer your question, I would hope that they would be looking into that to keep him on, like you say, in his prime, his age, what is 28, were you saying?
Yeah.
So
I mean, he could 5-year deal would be pretty good, 29 to 34.
Would be fantastic. That's the sweet spot. Yeah. So I want to hope as a fan that that's going to happen. We'll see.
Okay. Yeah. Prue, anything stand out to you from Kyle Tucker?
He's impressive all over. And like you said, he'd be a great long-term addition to a team like this. And he's, like you just mentioned, Tim, he's in the perfect age category for a 4 to 5 year deal, at least a big signing potentially. So, yeah, it'll be exciting if they think he's the real deal and are willing to make him a long-term Cub.
Absolutely. And I think it's kind of just a fun fact for the baseball fans out there. So in 2015, Kyle Tucker was drafted 5th, and the 9th pick of that draft was Ian Happ. So now they are just tucked into the same little lineup. It's kind of nice. The Twins did the same thing with Correa and Buxton. They're just all tucked into their little draft too. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of funny how these draft classes sometimes end up in the same lineup. But all right, let's move on to number 3. So Seiya Suzuki, right-handed batter, 30 years old. I think he's going to be slated for a lot of DH, but I believe he's got to play some outfield too. 3.5 WAR last year, 283, 366 on base, and an 848 OPS. And he knocked out 21 homers and 73 RBIs and also stole 16 bases. So I think my main takeaway from Seiya Suzuki is I've had him on my fantasy team, and I know he has durability concerns. He always has a Q next to him, like in football stuff. He's like always a day-to-day. He's got some nicks and he's got some concerns. So he missed 30 games last year. I think he missed a chunk the year before. In 2024, his K rate went up 5%, which I don't like. but his fly ball rate went up 10 points. That's pretty darn good, especially at Wrigley. And there's no real difference in production. So he had 20-74 and then 21-73 last year. So the last 2 years, he's giving you 20 homers and mid-70s RBIs. So you could do worse. But from a middle-of-the-order guy, I don't know. Sometimes I think I would want a little bit more. But then again, having a 3.5 WAR guy, that's not that bad. But being stuck at DH, do you think he's going to stay at DH most of the time this year, Tim?
I think he is. Honestly, he's somewhat of a liability out in the field. And having
bear on skates.
just seen him out in this spring, just a ball that's hit relatively softly, but in the air, and he kind of comes up and all of a sudden just, pulls off. And I'm like, that ball should have been caught. That's me maybe from my mentality, but
yeah. But also watching every other major league player do that catch.
Right, exactly. And Ian Happ will do that every time, he's going to lay out and make that play. And I don't know what it is with him in the field. And I think Craig Counsell, the manager, had a discussion with him earlier this spring and said that I don't feel that we had the proper communication last year. And so I want to be on a better page. And, they use an interpreter with him. His English is getting better. But so I think that communication is going to be helpful. And I think Counsell did say, hey, you will probably be doing more DH this year and less in the field. So if he takes to that, that could be, a beneficial thing. Just, not have to worry about that and focus more on his hitting. So that's my hope anyhow, how that could be beneficial for him.
Yeah, when I was looking through the lineup, I didn't really see anybody else that really needed to be DH. So it's probably kind of a good fit. I mean, if it's got to be somebody, it's probably him. So, I mean, he's certainly not a Gold Glove outfielder.
No.
And I know he doesn't play in the infield. I mean, at least hasn't in the States. I don't know what he did in Japan, but I don't recall him playing any other positions.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah, no, it sounds like the bear on skates wasn't doing much shortstop in Japan.
Right.
So that's all good. All right, the next one is kind of an interesting player, and I've always kind of followed this from a prospect aspect. So Michael Busch was a Dodgers prospect for a long time, and then he just kept getting blocked. I mean, when you look at the Dodgers lineup, and we'll talk about them in a future episode, but he finally got traded, and not for lack of talent. So Michael Busch is like one of those guys, like always a top prospect, always in the top 5 infielders and multiple years in a row. So he finally got traded, and he's going to be supposedly filling the cleanup role. So left-handed bat. I don't know if it's going to be a platoon or if he's going to be the permanent one, but he's 27-year-old, first base, and he had a 2.8 WAR last year, which isn't that bad. 248 average, 355 or 335 on base, and a 775 OPS. And he hit 21 home runs, 65 RBIs, and he even tossed in 2 stolen bases for good measure. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, a little shout out to Minnesota. He's from Elm Grove Heights. Woo-woo. Yep. Elm Grove Heights, yep. Minnesota. And he may be the strong side platoon with Father Time himself, Justin Turner, which we'll get to him later. But damn, when I saw they signed him, I'm like, really? They think he's going to be all right, sounds good. But I think if Michael Busch can just be the full-time, Father Time might not see the field very much. So the main takeaway from Fangraphs and kind of all the other statistics for Michael Busch is he has a relatively low hard hit rate, line drive rate, fly ball percentage, and he has a high K percentage. So when you put all those things together, that doesn't really sound that good. But the dude does walk. So he is patient. He sees pitches, and he generally swings at the pitches. He just doesn't always hit them. So 63 walks last year with 162 Ks. I don't know. I'm not as sold on this particular part of the order. But Tim, what have you seen this spring training so far, and what have you seen from Michael Busch? Either like, not like. What are we thinking on him?
Well, he's been lights out at the plate, locked in.
Really?
Okay. Spring. Oh yeah. Just like amazing. I should, again, I don't like to pull up spring training stats because they don't really matter. So I'm just going to say he's killing it at the plate. Yeah. He's looked outstanding in the field this spring. Okay. I think it's possible he just may have, found his place and his home. And again, Justin Turner, the fewer games you have to have him play, probably the better. Where he can work out a little bit when he needs, a little break for our first baseman or maybe our third baseman, kind of work through that. But yeah. So
DH.
I'm like cautiously optimistic about Bush and the Cubs in the end, which I'll tell you that. But it's kind of I don't know. I just got a really good feeling about him. That's more of a gut than, like you say, and he's been hitting and fielding, and just like he's been
that
one
also
of
helps.
the standout players of this spring for the Chicago Cubs. So if he can continue and feel like he's found his place, then I think we might have something with him.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean,
if coaches are seeing that he's swinging and hitting the ball hard and all that good things, you're right. The spring stats don't really matter
until they do. You can certainly send someone down for sucking.
Well, that's true.
And I believe, even Tim. I mean, Chris Bryant, spring stats don't matter, do they? He got himself on a team and caused controversy and changed the rules of baseball.
Yeah.
So sometimes you put together such a spring that you need to change the rules on when time starts. And so that's what they can do. But I agree. I'm kind of messing a little bit, but spring stats, a lot of times these guys are just working on stuff. Sometimes the pitchers are only throwing one pitch.
Oh, exactly.
Sometimes the pitchers get rocked and then they come back in the next inning. So if you guys haven't been to spring training and don't know that, there's a rule in spring training. The pitcher can just get rocked, give up 6 hits and 8 walks, then just come back in the next inning after they pull him and get someone else to actually get the 3 outs.
They'll put in a relief pitcher for him, then finish the inning, and then he comes back the next inning, which is weird. And I have to say, re-entering the game, it's just like...
Yes, that's got to be fun to say. And back in for more,
even
though you don't get quite the liberty to do that, do you?
Exactly. That's pretty wild.
It is. So they get to go back in. So that's always fun. So I want to go to the next one. So the next one is one of my favorite baseball players, period. Not because he's a Hall of Famer, great, all these things. But, man, he's a good dude. Dansby Swanson, he is I think this is his 3rd year in Chicago, right?
Yeah.
It's your 3rd or 2nd. I think it's 3rd, though. But right-handed batter, shortstop, 31 years old now. And he had a 4 WAR last year, a lot of it on defense when I read you this stat line. But at 242 average, 312 on base, 701 OPS. He only got 16 homers and 66 RBIs, still got you 19 stolen bases. But this was not what we expected from Dansby. It wasn't the best year. He had a horrible, horrible start last year. And then he rallied back to at least salvage his stat line. But this is a former number 1 pick back in 2015. So weird. Who else were we talking about in 15? That's right. Kyle Tucker, Ian Happ. They have the whole damn draft class. I'm telling you, this thing's weird that way. But what's fun about him, just fun baseball stat, because at the shrewdness, we try and hook you up with a little bit of everything. But he was actually traded before he played for anybody for Shelby Miller from Atlanta. So that's how he got to Atlanta from Arizona. So Arizona drafted him, and then he got drafted for Shelby Miller, who I think we'll talk about him in another episode too. But Shelby Miller's still around too, but not doing as well as Dansby. But Dansby's a 2-time All-Star, 2-time Gold Glove. He did have his career high in stolen bases last year with 19. But that 701 OPS was his worst since 2018 when he finished with a 699. So again, had a brutal start last year. But apparently, and I wasn't tracking this, I don't know if you were ever tracking this either, Tim, but he claims that he had a core injury that he'd been playing through for 2 straight years. So he had surgery to repair that in the offseason. Says he's feeling great. But what have you seen out there at Sloan Park this year about Dansby Swanson? How's he looking this year?
He's looking like the Dansby of old, in particular in the field. I mean, some of the plays this guy makes, I just marvel at. Like the range and then going over and just whirling and throwing this, and you're thinking, how is that even going to, be accurate? And it's right there. It's just, he is really a phenomenal fielder. And, that's, when you're playing shortstop,
real good.
You have to have that. So, in this day and age, probably always needed to have it. But, so in terms of his hitting this spring, it's one of those things. I haven't noticed anything negative, and he hasn't been lighting it up either. I think he was last I looked, he was hitting like 220 or something. So it's again doesn't
Okay.
matter because who knows what
Yep.
if he's
Spring
working
stats
on
don't matter until they
certain
do.
yeah. But
That's it.
so I'm like hearing about the injury that he had and why we didn't hear about it before makes you wonder a little bit. But anyhow, now that apparently he's got it taken care of, definitely gives me
Yeah.
hope that he's going to come out and have a hell of a season.
Same. Yeah, I like him. And the kind of fun story with him. So I love minor league baseball. I really, really love double A baseball. And when I was living down in the South for a while, I got to go to a ton of the Southern League. And so when Dansby Swanson was down there with Ozzy Albies, Austin Riley, and frankly, I can go through, that's just the Braves guys. Got to see a bunch of the Tampa dudes up in Montgomery. But he was so nice, so genuine, and everybody knew he was the number one pick. Everybody knew that's who they were coming to see. And when he came through, he signed nearly everybody's ball. So I went down and got one, and then I sent my wife over to go get Ozzy Albies, and they both signed him, man. So I've had soft spots for those guys the whole time because they stayed until everybody left. They signed a crap load of balls in the
I
middle
love
of
that.
summer in I think Mobile, Alabama is the game we were at to go see him. And I just loved it. And so that's who Dansby Swanson is. And he did it every single game because I went to another game and he did the same thing.
That's
And so
fantastic.
I just think this guy, I don't know if obviously you don't do that quite the same in the majors, but I know I went to a spring training game and I saw him do the same thing. And that was a couple years back. Obviously, Dansby's
That will
awesome.
help you become like a fan favorite because fans see that.
Absolutely.
They're looking for autographs. It's the same thing going back to Harry Carey and the first Ho-Ho-Cum Stadium, the old one that was torn down. It had a wide open press box. So if the fans stood, the fans in the last row stood on their seats, their heads would be looking over the press box, which was weird. So if I ever made a mistake, I knew about it because I could hear them. They're like, hey, and as a younger guy, which made me not want to make mistakes. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
But Harry Carey, they would want to get his autograph after the game, and he would stay until the last fan had an autograph, sometimes 30, 40 minutes after the game. I'm like, no wonder the fans like really adored him because he would do this. Steve Stone, his partner at the time, former, Cy Young pitcher back in the day, he would literally close his briefcase and walk out. The fans would be like, Steve, can I get an autograph? He would, just like look away and shoot, right out like nothing, no autograph. And Harry would stay in just for 40 minutes. And I just thought, well, that's the difference. And I don't know if maybe, Steve Stone, because of being a former Cy Young Award winner and blah, 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 was, thinking he was, too good for that or whatever. I don't know. But what I'm just saying is players and announcers like Harry who do that, it does mean a lot to the fans. It really does.
Absolutely. He didn't have enough Budweisers, apparently. That's why he's down at old Shy Sox now.
People would
go to the other side of town, buddy.
Budweiser. they love doing that. Handing him a beer over because you could do it. And they'd fit a beer and he'd grab it.
He would never say no is what I understood. That's funny. So, Prue, have you ever seen Dansby? You ever been to a game and watched him play?
I've not seen him live, but I know he's a hell of a fielder. That's kind of what I've, wasn't necessarily a Braves fan when he first came up and so forth, but that was always his reputation, was his fielding and so forth. So good to see he's still doing that with the glove, even at 31.
Absolutely. No, he's a stud. All right, so sixth in the order, at least slotted, is Nico Horner. So solid hitter, right-handed bat. He's 27, going into his prime year. Going to be playing second base. 3.7 WAR again. And this is a theme, by the way. It's going to kind of give you a little foreshadowing to where I'm going to be leaning towards the end of this. So 3.7. We've already had 3.9, 4.7, 3.5, 2.8, 4. Yeah, they're all way above replacement, every single player so far. That is correct. You're not mishearing things. All right, so Nico Horner last year, 273, 335 on base, 708 OPS. He's not going to hit you too many dingers. That's not what he does. 7 home runs, 48 RBIs. But here's what he does do, 31 stolen bases. So another first-round pick. Weird they have a lot of those. Very steady. So he's not really awesome for fantasy so much unless you're looking for average and steals.
Right.
But for real life, he's real good. Average on base, stolen bases, and he's a gold glove defender. And solid contact. He's not going to strike out all the time and screw you. He's going to move the guys over. I think he's a fantastic bat in the lineup. I think he's going to fit in really well in this lineup again, especially with the new additions. What have you seen from Nico so far this year, Tim, in spring training and otherwise?
Well, I've seen nothing from him because he's been injured, so he has not played.
Oh, he has?
Yeah, so
Ooh, that's not a good start.
No, I don't think he made the trip to Japan either because he's rehabbing here. So, but he's not far off.
Who's been filling in for him?
Well, they've got this guy named John Birdie. He has been basically kind of that second baseman, and actually who's had a good spring, but obviously he's not going to be that guy in the regular season. Exactly. So they're just hopeful that he actually gets healthy soon and he's ready to go, like, if not right at the beginning of the season, very shortly after. And obviously, I think you made the case of he's a solid player entering the prime of his career. He can do a lot of good things, and he fits, really well.
Yeah, I just think when you're strong up the middle and you got a gold glove second base, gold glove shortstop, gold glove left field, you're looking pretty good. And that's just not that bad. And the stuff I'd read recently, so I knew he'd been out a little bit. I didn't know he still wasn't back, but there wasn't really any doubt he was going to be ready for opening day. So I think I misread. So Japan, he's probably obviously not going to, but they still think he's going to be ready for opening day, right?
They're just being very careful with him, and they don't want to rush anything. And I can understand that. They hope he's going to be the integral part. So we'll see where he's at. The last I saw of him on some of the backfields, which was actually probably about 2 weeks ago, he still wasn't throwing overhand. He was pitching the ball and stuff.
Really?
So, yeah. Let me say 3 weeks ago. Oh. So maybe he's a lot further along than that, and I just haven't been, seeing him where he's been practicing and that. So I don't want to get any Cubs fans alarmed here.
That's all right. Well, a good thing from second base, half the time you can roll it to first.
Well, exactly.
So that should also help assuage fears.
There you go.
That's right. All right, so we'll roll into the next one. And I like watching this guy play. Again, from a fantasy perspective, I probably don't, but Pete Crow Armstrong. So left-handed bat. He's young, man, 22-year-old center fielder, 2.3 WAR. Not really giving it to you with the bat yet, so I'm hopeful, though. But 237 average, 286 on base, so not real good there either. 670 OPS, not real good there either. 10 home runs, 47 RBIs, not the worst. 27 steals, you can live with that because, they all run. They got speed up and down the lineup. But he was their first-round pick in 2020. So he immediately got screwed by being drafted in 2020 because they didn't have any minor leagues that year. Brutal start last year, just like Dansby. But like Dansby, he rallied and kind of had a pretty good finish. So there is some promise. And I know you just saw, but a couple days ago, he hit 2 dingers. I believe that was at Sloan Park.
It was.
So maybe the power is going to show up this.
Yep.
Oh, it was a grand slam too?
One of them was a grand slam. Again, 22, but they call him chaos because that's what he does on the bases. He is like he had earlier a little league home run, basically. Someone throws it away and he just keeps on going. A ball he was stealing. I think he was going from second to third, trying to steal, and of course then the ball gets by, so he's home already. It's just that's the kind of thing he does on the bases. And so the announcers are calling him chaos on the bases.
I love
he can
chaos.
Bring that bat around, and he shows a certain maturity that I hadn't seen from him in the past, to be honest. He just feels like, from what I can see, that he belongs with these guys and that I'm here to do my part. And when I saw those 2 home runs, I'm kind of like, well, no, maybe he's going to pick up those numbers at the plate a little bit this year. And if he can do that, even just, a modicum,
be huge.
Watch out, because the guy is just, he's just fun to watch. That's fun baseball, the way he plays it, hard nose all the time.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen him play defense, and I know coming up as a prospect because, again, our Dynasty League, we draft minor league players, so we watch them from 18 until they finally get in the major leagues, unless they're the college guys. But Pete Crow Armstrong coming up, he was always kind of a glove first prospect.
Yep.
And he had line drive. He could hit the ball hard, but he never elevated it.
Right.
And so that was one thing they said, well, if he can ever start elevating it, he could be a 15 to 25 guy. And so, heck, I mean, he hit 2 in a game. I know he hasn't done that yet. So I think there could be something. I mean, he's already got the speed. I think he can get 30 stolen bases if he gets on base a little bit more, but 286 limits that
old,
too.
So there's a lot of potential there. So
absolutely.
I have, again, cautiously optimistic that bat's going to come around even more. So we'll see. But, I really like Pete Crow. Like I say, he's kind of infectious to the team too, and that's hard to quantify in numbers.
It is.
For a team. So, we'll see.
But staying strong up the middle, because I know he brings it on the defense. That's a fact.
He's outstanding.
And when I see World Series teams year after year, all I know is that almost all the time, I'm sure there's exceptions. You could probably call them out on me, but second base, shortstop, catcher, center fielder, usually pretty damn good. Yeah. All right, so we're going to go to the next spot, though. So this one, I am particularly hopeful he does well this year because I am starting him as my third baseman this year in fantasy. Matt Shaw. So right-handed bat, he's going to be playing third base, even though he came up as a second base prospect. He's 23 years old. He probably was good enough to be up there the entire time last year, but just no spot. But in the minors last year, he's 284, 379 on base, 867 OPS, had nothing left to show in the minors. I don't believe he made the trip to Japan, though, did he? Or did he?
He did.
He did make it.
Yep.
Okay. I know that was like in doubt until I know it was like 2 days ago. It certainly was.
He had an oblique injury, so he was out a little bit earlier in the spring, but then he's been back, and his bat's starting to come around, and so I think they just feel like this will be a good experience for him, and that they really want him to be that third baseman for them this year. So this will be interesting to see, how much playing time he gets in these 2 games over in Japan if he does indeed start there. And I'm guessing if they brought him there, probably. So
I think if they send him, he's playing.
Yeah,
that's my guess. Otherwise, they keep getting him at bats here and do the split squad games still.
Exactly.
I think the Cubs are still doing split squad games, right?
No, they're not. Actually, they're
not doing any of those, huh?
Nope, there's nothing happening. It's really weird. They've got a break of like 10 days. So the only game that I'm going to be doing is on Saturday at Sloan Park. They'll have what they call the spring breakout, which is a series of the top minor leaguers. So the Cubs' top minor leaguers are going to be playing the Angels' top minor leaguers on Saturday. But
that'd be kind of cool, a futures game.
It is kind of cool, and essentially a futures game. So I'm actually looking forward to that. And there's nothing. They're shut down until the actual team until the 21st, I believe, when they'll have their next game. It's weird. I've never had.
So Tim, I'm going to give you a shrewdness assignment. You got to take your notebook to that game and come back with some prospects for us that we can.
There you go. Because all the prospects are going to be playing. They're all going to be there. So, it's spring training. So a lot of them have already played throughout the season. The starters will generally play about 5, maybe 6 innings, depending, and then they'll change it out, which does make it interesting and exciting for a PA announcer when they change out all 9 guys at the same time. They don't do that in the regular season, so exactly.
Yeah.
That's so I'm looking forward to that.
All right. So that will bring us in to the next spot. So Matt Shaw sounds like he's going to be playing in Japan, having a good time. Hopefully he gets to play. Hopefully he plays third because, frankly, I need his stats.
Exactly. I mean, the Cubs hope that he's going to be all of that at third, too. So if he is for the Cubs, then he's going to be for you, too.
That's a win for all of us right there. I'll take it. All right, so the guy behind the plate. So the battery mate for all the pitchers this year is supposed to be right-handed batter Miguel Amaya. So 26-year-old catcher. 1.9 WAR last year, 232 average, 288 on base, 644 OPS, 8 home runs, 47 RBIs. Did not accidentally steal a base last year, so that's all right. But I think it's going to be, the way I look at this thing, I think Carson Kelly is probably going to play quite a bit too. And if you guys remember Carson Kelly, and the Cubs fans might, but he was the heir apparent to Yadier Molina in St. Louis. But then Yadi just kept on playing so damn much, they finally traded Carson Kelly. So Carson Kelly bounced around to a different couple teams. But now here he is as a 30-year-old. So between Miguel Amaya and Carson Kelly, I think those two are going to be probably all of the catching duties this year, right? Barring an injury to one of those two.
Pretty much, yeah.
And I mean, who do you think's actually going to start? So I know Fangraphs has Miguel Amaya, but Carson Kelly's a damn good catcher.
He is a good catcher, and he's looked great this spring too. Amaya's been in the Cubs system for a long time, and they've kind of nurtured him along the way. I think they're hoping that he'll potentially blossom into what they've thought he would eventually always be. He's shown some good power this spring. He looks like he's hitting the ball well. Defensively, I know they've wanted a little bit more from him, and maybe, that's something that we'll see as he gets to this kind of age now where he should be a good defensive catcher if he's going to play the bulk of the game. So I think, it's going to be a split. It's just a matter of how they're feeling about, maybe there's, numbers that are looking for, platooning, depending on, who hits righties, lefties, whatever, all that goes down. We'll see. It's kind of, I think, to be determined. But I really like Carson Kelly coming in there. I think that was a nice pickup for him, even if he is playing, a lesser amount of games.
Yeah, and the thing I like about Carson Kelly, I mean, he's only 30, and he learned behind Yadier Molina for his big chunk of his career. He was given opportunities at Arizona. He just never really took them and ran. He's never had an issue. Defense isn't his problem. It's offense, but frankly, he was a little bit better in every category last year on the slash line.
Yeah.
Actually, every single category on the slash line. So Carson Kelly is going to get plenty of at-bats for Chicago this year. I think it's probably going to be an even split. Probably be a hot bat situation that Craig Counsell going to have to be balancing. That's my guess is how that's going to play out. Carson Kelly has batted above the ninth spot in most lineups he's been in. So I imagine they probably put Pete Crow Armstrong down there and probably move Matt Shaw up a little bit. But I think that's probably where he would actually slide in when it's Carson Kelly's time. But during spring training games, where have these guys been batting? I mean, I know it's not a set lineup for these games. I know that, but where have you been putting them?
Kelly has been down like 8 usually.
Okay.
Amaya has batted similarly, but there's been a couple of times where they put him up higher. I think they're like hoping that, that power kind of can take off of his, or maybe just trying to give him a little more confidence type of thing. So we'll see. But yeah, they're going to be lower in the batting order, I think, either way when the season starts.
I agree with your take, Dex. It's probably going to be a lot of the who's got the hot hand. I mean, because they're both right-handed, it's it's hard to look at at trends and so forth and decide against righties you're going to play or you're not or whatever.
Right.
So it might just come down to who's been playing well and who's had a break lately.
If one was a switch hitter, I think you could almost see a platoon thing going. But two right-handed bats do damn near the same thing.
Right.
I don't know, man. I think it's going to be hot hands going. And maybe just kind of, I don't know if you've heard anything about the pitchers preferring either of these catchers over the others. I know they don't usually say that in public, but I know that magically some of these days, Carson Kelly just always seems to catch Justin Steele. I don't really know. Well, one of those things.
And we'll find out. Since Kelly's relatively new here, that is something that we may look at as the season goes on and, how that works.
Mm-hmm. I know there's a thing, man, having talked to a couple pitchers back in the day. They like their catcher, and Greg Maddux made it a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, Javi Lopez did not get to play when Greg Maddux pitched. He had his own catcher he dragged with him for like a decade. I think they dragged him even when he was with the Cubs. I can't remember how long he was with them, but I know the entire time with the Braves for the most part, they had his catcher. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of crazy. All right, I want to go into the bench guys, Tim, and I don't really know much about any of these. I'll talk about Justin Turner, so I do know about him.
Right.
I was surprised. I talked to some of so living in Illinois now, just east of St. Louis.
Okay.
There's a lot of Cubs fans here. I mean, we got Cardinals fans, but there's also a ton of Cubs fans. And when I said, Justin Turner, huh? And they're like, oh, God, what are we doing with a 40-year-old? I'm younger than that guy. What do we think about Justin Turner? Does he have one more gear to crank? You can be thinking he can be a serviceable 40-year-old bat in that lineup?
We're going to find out, I guess. I mean, Yeah,
Yeah,
it was actually a little bit of a head scratcher to me. It wasn't like on my radar that, this
at all.
Justin 40-year-old Justin Turner's coming in. So my thought is that they don't want to use him that much, but they do like him in the clubhouse, that they like that he's been on championship teams, that, he could, impart some wisdom to some of these younger players because they do have a fair amount of younger players on the Cubs team.
Yeah,
So, maybe that's part of the strategy.
because he's probably a in clubhouse hitting coach, to be dead honest. I mean, even coming up with the Mets, that dude's always been an
Yeah,
absolute major league hitter. He's
exactly.
always hit. He's never not hit. And I'll read his stats from last year. I mean, so I'm kind of mocking him for being 40, but dude still hit 259, 354 on base, 737 OPS, and he still had 11 homers, 55 RBIs, and that was not a full-time assignment. And so
Right.
he did well enough. I mean, it's not a terrible signing. It's just odd because when we get down to the prospects, it's an absurd list of young prospects. And when I was looking at them, I was like, well, why the hell would they sign the 40-year-old? But I kind of like your take, Tim, that he might just be the dugout batting coach that they'll listen to just to help these young guys out.
That's kind of what I was thinking. There is something to be said for that. And, bringing Counsell over from the Brewers, that was such a big to do. It's like they need him to be a manager that brings this team up above where their projections are. They need Counsell to kind of say, hey, we've got a lot of good parts. How do we put it all together? So this is going to be a real test for him. Like say, and we'll get to like the pitching, but because that's where I'm a little bit more worried than the position players, to be honest. So which always worries me.
I think they're going to score some
anyhow.
runs.
So yeah. But so we'll see what kind of magic Counsell can do here.
They've definitely got some questions. We'll see what's what. I think the questions I got are the bench guys. So when I'm looking at John Birdie and Vidal Brujan specifically, he has never been good. He has never shown anything. He is 27 years old of garbage. He must have had prospect pedigree at some point back in the day.
I'm guessing.
But his baseball reference card is hot garbage. I mean, is there anything redeemable besides he can bat poorly left-handed and poorly right-handed that we need to take out from this guy? I just don't see it. I feel like I could be the replacement player for this guy.
Yeah, I'm not.
And that might be harsh.
It might be harsh, but it might not be too far off. I don't see him as a long-term serious piece of this puzzle, but I mean, he's here now and looking at his numbers in the past, that's a little bit of a head scratcher. They have, another guy that they really like who's had a really nice spring, who maybe hasn't had a chance to show. Gage Workman, if you're familiar with him. He's an Arizona kid originally. Went to high school here in Arizona and played ball there. Actually, he played with my nephew, who played for Gilbert High back when. But they like him, and he's a bigger guy, 6'4", a little over 200 pounds, but yet he can play shortstop in a pinch if he has to. He's got some good pop on his bat, and you can probably look up his numbers and see what that has been in the past. But I think he's like maybe 25 or 26 years old, and I think they feel like they may have discovered somebody with this one, Gage Workman. They really like him. So,
in what positions he play? He didn't come up in any of my research.
Yeah, so he can play third. Like I said, he's even played short. He's played second. He can play first. He's very flexible fielder. He's even played in the outfield as well. I don't know if he's played in the outfield this spring, but I heard that he has in the past played outfield. So
he's athletic.
Yes, he's very athletic for a guy that's 6'4" and 205 pounds or whatever he is.
That's awesome.
Yep.
Okay, so Vidal Brujan better be looking over his shoulder. That's what it sounds like to me.
I just thought the first time I saw him and kind of looked at his numbers that this was just kind of a camp body kind of guy. But right now,
number 98,
he's in Japan. So
maybe the tariffs will be too high to bring him home. We'll see what happens.
Right.
All right. Well, let's parlay on over into the pitching. So starting pitching. So I'll run through the staff, kind of what's projected. I'll kind of give if there's still camp battles. I don't know if there's really any camp battles left, but Shota Imanaga, Justin Steele, Jamison Taillon, Matthew Boyd, and Colin Ray. That is projected top 5. Tim, am I still correct? Are they the top 5 that you're hearing
That's what we're looking at. That's what we're looking at. And again,
right.
I look at it and I'm kind of like, yeah, that's serviceable.
They're 5 pitchers.
And you're banking on Steele and Imanaga to like recreate the kind of seasons that they had last year, which, is asking a fair amount. I just don't know. That's where I get worried, where I would have loved to have had them bring in, another strong arm in that starting rotation over the offseason, but they didn't. And again, that goes back in my mind to the Ricketts frugalness or supposed frugalness. I don't know, but there were options.
Yeah, sounds a lot like for the Twins conversation we had earlier about a week ago, the Polads, who also refused to do anything and won't even have the decency to sell the damn team to the guy who was going to do a lot of fun things with it.
So I've got 2 Twins fans on the phone.
Yeah.
Are you jealous of all these lefties?
Oh my gosh, it is kind of funny.
We made a big deal about having 5 right-handed starters for Minnesota this year, and
so just for the shrewdness out there, you're obviously not looking at our page, but Shota Imanaga, left-handed pitcher, Justin Steele, left-handed, Matthew Boyd, left-handed. In the Twins, I don't even know if they have a left-hander in the system. I mean, it's just all righties as far as you can see.
One
then it goes over the horizon. I think. That's it. We signed that guy, so column A. But anyway, so Shota Imanaga, left-hander, 31 years old. He's going to be the top of the rotation. He had a fantastic year last year, 15-3, 173 innings, a 2.91 ERA, a 1.021 WHIP, which is fantastic, a 3 WAR, 9 Ks per 9. So he's basically throwing a K every single inning. And this is what's just disgusting because I love 4-to-1 ratio. That's when I think a pitcher is really damn good. If you're in the high 3s, I still love you. He was 6.2. 6.2. He had 174 Ks and only 28 walks.
Isn't that wild?
28 the whole season. That's like 4 a month. That's just dumb.
I mean, he just came in. He was a revelation. He really was.
Yeah.
I did not expect him to do what he did. And so does that settle? Does the league, understand him better this year? Do, we know his game plan?
Yeah.
I don't know. I get worried about things like that. So,
You're a Cubs fan. You should get worried. Like, you can't have nice things. You already had your World Series. You have 100 more years until another one.
Well, law of averages says he's going to regress some, but you hope he can hold at least part of that form.
Well, that's it.
Absolutely.
He doesn't, if he did that would be great what he did last year if he recreated that, but he doesn't have to. He just has to really, have a solid year, and then he is one link in the chain. Steele needs to do the, similar. So, and the rest of it, when you're talking Boyd and Ray, and I look at them and I look at their histories, and I'm kind of like, okay, well, here we go. I hope these guys really do well.
Now, this is kind of like when you walk off the back of the plane, you just hope the parachute opens.
Exactly.
So I think that's what this staff looks like. I agree. And so last year, Imanaga, he was the all-star for the Cubs.
Yeah.
He was 5th in Cy Young voting, 4th in Rookie of the Year, but it's kind of one of those fake Rookie of the Years.
Right.
And not to be mean.
No.
When you come over and you're 30, I don't give you Rookie of the Year cred, which is probably why he got 4th.
Right.
But regardless, he did really well in his first year. Justin Steele, so he wasn't – he just didn't really have the full year either.
Yep.
So he's 5-5. He's 29 years old. He still finished with 134 innings. And when he pitched, he was really good. 3.07 ERA, 1.099 WHIP, 1.9 WAR, but again, didn't get all the innings that you'd expect. Still had a 9 K per 9, so again, 1 strikeout an inning average is phenomenal. And another phenomenal ratio, so 135 Ks to 37 walks. They just don't put people on base. You got to hit your way on. That's what I like about this starting lineup. And like I said before when we were going through the lineup, the defense is full of gold gloves all over the place.
Right.
So put the ball in play. Just don't put it over the damn fence.
Right.
Just don't put on Waveland Avenue.
Just put it on
okay.
Waveland. Exactly.
That's it. And so I think, again, he took a slight step back last year, but his overall numbers are fine. He was playing through some injuries. I think he had a hamstring at one point, and then a forearm at another point. But I think for a fantasy perspective, he's someone to take a risk on for a bounce back. Because, again, it's not like he pitched bad. He pitched great. He just kind of nicked and going through some stuff. And I think he's a big, strong kid. I think he's going to be fine. He's probably going to slip a little bit in the draft just because of that. So I think from a fantasy perspective and real life perspective, I think he's going to have a good year. Yeah. And I don't see any reason not to think that. Have you seen anything from Justin Steele this spring that makes you think, I'm not so sure about that?
Not at all. Okay. And that's the thing. He pitched, Tuesday? I think he might have pitched on Tuesday. And he did not look good in the first inning. Gave up quite a few runs. And then they put in somebody for relief there to get out of the inning. And then he came back. Yeah. And then he just mowed him down after that. So it's like, I don't know if they're working on fastballs, the first inning, what they're
certain
doing.
pitches.
So you cannot really judge too much. So I just have to go by what he's done, and he seems healthy, and that's a big point. So we'll see. But I have, again, cautious optimism with him.
Yep. No, I agree. The third one I think is very interesting to me. So Jameson Taillon, this is a former, I think, number 2 overall pick or something along the line. But he was basically drafted in that Pittsburgh, hopefully resurgence is what they were looking for. All I remember is they had Garrett Cole already with Pittsburgh. They had Tyler Glasnow. And then they drafted this guy. I think he was like the top 3 pick or something like that. I don't remember exactly where he was at. But they had one season. That's what I do remember. So 2017 was the one year they had all 3 of those guys. Then the next year, Garrett Cole went to Houston and did great things there. And probably put his best years there, but he was pretty damn good at Pittsburgh. But even with that year, when they had all 3 of these guys, under 500, won like 78 games. Just kind of a sad little thing, and it's kind of the end of the Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
I don't know. They never seem to have a true renaissance, but that's where I remember him. Then he obviously bounced around a little bit, had Tommy John a couple times, but he had a good year last year. So right-handed pitcher, he's 33 now. So it's been a hot minute since he's been kind of like a young, hot prospect. But he was awesome with the Yankees a few years ago, and that's kind of what buoyed him back up. But he did have 165 innings. I think that was his high mark in the last few years. 3.27 ERA, 113 WHIP, 2.2 WAR. Thing that very noticeable for anyone that's been watching him play, 6.8 K per 9 is absurdly low. Because when he was in his peak, he was around like 11. And now he's either a pitch to contact guy, which is odd. It's not really what he's been his entire career. But again, like all these Cubs pitchers, he doesn't walk anybody. So 125 Ks to 33 walks. That's a 3.79 rate, which is exceptional. Again, exceptional. Anything over 3.5 is awesome. 4 is great. That's elite. But these guys are all towing up to that, getting close to the 4. But the thing, I think it's going to stick out for him that I don't know if it's just it's getting older, but 33 is not old to me now that I've seen Verlander and Scherzer and all these guys. I'm like
33 for a pitcher.
So I think he's got a lot left in the tank, but I also know that he lost fastball velocity last year. It's down to like 92. And that's just not that fast. And I don't know what was up. He just was working through stuff, just trying not to overthrow it. But that's not who he's been previous seasons. But then again, he turned in a great year. So I don't really know what to make of it. What do you think, Tim, from watching him last year? And this year, yes.
Yeah, I felt good about him this spring. He's been getting, really good reports on where he's at and that he's kind of looking to have a solid year. But I just don't know. When you mention the numbers that change like that, what is that signal for this year? Does it signal he's going the opposite way? And, or is he going to like rebound and kind of, pull that back a little bit? So again, that's where I get these question marks about beyond Shota and Steele. I get the question marks about the next 3 in the rotation. So it's almost just kind of like wait and see. And I'm thinking like the coaching staff knows more than I do, and they, they're on
Hope
this
so.
thing. Exactly. So, I mean, I hope they do for sure, but they obviously do. But
Yeah.
it's just like we'll see.
So I've got a take on that. I think it can go one of two ways. When you're a 33-year-old pitcher and you're starting to lose your velocity, either you're on your way out of the league or you've learned how to pitch, right?
Yeah.
And if he's not walking people and he can locate, even though he's losing velocity, he still had a good whip last year.
Yeah, great whip.
So I think it's you kind of take off and you go one of two ways at this point in your career. You're either gonna go down fighting and you're still gonna locate pitches and get outs, or you're gonna just start giving up way too many hard hit balls and you'll get run out of the games quicker and not survive long. So it seems like a very kind of pivotal moment in this guy's career. If he's gonna this, like you said, Tim, this might be a good test this season to see how he's gonna perform.
Yeah. If I had this defense behind me, I also probably wouldn't be as paranoid about having the ball be put in play.
Yeah.
Exactly. Gold glove left field, Gold glove caliber in center, Gold glove up the middle. Matt Shaw's a good defender. I mean, even coming through the minors, I mean, he's a 5-tool player. He's not just a fat guy at third. He's a second baseman playing third.
Yeah.
And it's more his arm that he'd be concerned about more than anything is the throw from third to first. It's not getting it and throwing it accurately.
Right.
And first base, we've kind of talked about this in multiple episodes. 2 steps to the left, 2 steps to the right, catch the ball, man. That's all I need you to do at first base. And Michael Busch also was a second baseman coming up. So I feel like he's going to have the athleticism to the guys like this. If that's normal, if that's what it is, Prue, and it's not a bad point. I think there is something to learning how to pitch, right? That's a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And on these guys, if that's what it is, that's not the worst thing in the world because keeping the ball on the ground in Wrigley is a good thing in the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you can't come up as a 22-year-old and just throw lights out all the time and expect to have that last your whole career, right? You're going to tail off, and so you got to learn how to pitch eventually.
These guys can hit fastballs that are 95. They can hit fastballs that are 98. So, and I think Greg Maddux proved to everybody that you can even throw 90. The fourth pitcher that we're going to talk about, and this one's interesting to me. So Matthew Boyd, left-handed pitcher. I remember Matthew Boyd was all the rage with Detroit. And they were like, oh, my God, they got to trade him while his value is so high. And then they never did. And lo and behold, here he is on the Cubs. And he's 34 now. So 34-year-old. He's come back from Tommy John. So he had only 39 innings last year. So 2-2, 39 innings, 2.72 ERA in those 39 innings. Not bad. 113 whip. Again, nothing wrong with that. And when he was pitching, 10.4 Ks per 9. And like all these guys, 46 Ks to 13 walks. That's awesome. But here's my thing, Tim, and I know you're already thinking about this. He hasn't pitched a full season since 2019.
Yeah.
That is a long time ago. I can't remember what I was doing last week for lunch, much less in 2019.
Yeah.
That's the last time this dude did a full season. So there is some risk on this guy.
For sure. Definitely. And again, I'm just kind of like hoping that it's almost weird because your mind in looking at the numbers and looking at the reality and this guy hasn't really pitched full time for a long time. And now, he's just going to be a part of our rotation and he's going to be like, good. Like, I hope so.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. But I will see. The jury's out.
And then you have to consider he has less than 200 innings pitched over the past 4 seasons combined.
Right. I know.
Going back from Tommy John, but the good news is, so he missed obviously most of last year and all the year before, but he was dominant at the end of last year with Cleveland. And he parlayed that into a 2-year deal with the Cubs for $29 million. So weird they won't spend money on these other guys, but they will take the Tommy John guy who had 4 good games, 40 innings,
interesting
for $15 million a pop. That's aggressive to me, but especially at 34, he's not a 28-year-old guy doing that.
No,
he's a 34-year-old coming off Tommy John guy doing that. I don't know how many offers there were at $15 million a season for a 2-year deal. But hey, man, I'm not a GM either. I guess I don't know. But Matthew Boyd, good luck to him. From fantasy, I'll throw this out. He's not undraftable. And in some of the deeper leagues, if he's your 5th guy, all right, that's not the worst thing. But just be ready to replace him is kind of the short of it. I just don't know how you can feel super comfortable with a guy that hasn't done a full season in 6 seasons. So it's really hard to believe that. And all right, we'll get to the depth here in a minute. But let's go to number 5, who I think is also on the chopping block potentially. So Colin Ray, right-handed pitcher, another 34-year-old. So we got some of these crusty vets. He went 12-6 last year, which is not bad at all. 167 innings, 4.29 ERA is passable. A 1.26 WHIP, it's passable. Again, I don't really like it when it gets over 1.2. Really don't like it over 1.25 and 1.3. You can just get off my team. And he's kind of getting close to all those numbers. 1.2 WAR, 7.2 K per 9. Again, didn't walk many people again for the most part, but he didn't really strike that many out either. So 135 Ks to 43 walks. So he still had over a 3.14 strikeout to walk ratio, which isn't horrible. But his deal is he gives up gopher balls, man. Like, I don't know how that's going to work out in Wrigley Field this year. But maybe he can learn to throw a sinker or something that works, that keeps it on the ground. But I don't have high hopes for Colin Ray, Tim. I don't know what you've seen or
I don't have high hopes for Colin Ray either. And I'm sorry to say that as a Cubs fan and like having any Cubs fans hear this. But if they're halfway, looking into the deeper picture, it's like, do we just think he's coming out and just going to be
sure he's coming out at 34?
Right.
Found it.
Yeah. No, I'm frightened by Colin Ray personally, but yeah. And I haven't.
I mean, I feel like I could tee off on him.
I haven't seen much in spring training that tells me otherwise. But again, could be working on pitches. But at this point at 34,
working on pitches,
know what you're doing. So
yeah,
let's see.
I've hoped you've worked on enough by then. I mean, you should have your pitches worked out by 34, man.
You'd think.
Yeah, Prue, you did our Milwaukee episode, and we were kind of talking about one of the losses. And I don't remember you really saying Colin Ray was too big of a loss.
He was a loss. I'll say that.
That's right. He left. He left.
Yeah.
His locker is empty there now.
One of those addition by subtraction things over there.
Yeah, kind of.
It seemed to be when we did our Milwaukee episode, yeah. But he's certainly replaceable. So when we go through that old 1.2 wins above replacement, sounds good. That's not hard to find with a pitcher, though. It's just not. Yeah. So I think one of the guys we will absolutely see, and who probably would have been the 5th starter. He tweaked his oblique, though, in spring training. So Javier Assad, right-handed pitcher.
Yeah.
Javier Assad, 27. I mean, that's at least the age you're looking for, right? I mean, get someone out of their mid-30s.
Exactly.
He went 7-6 last year, 147 innings pitched, so he got a lot of innings in, relatively. 3.73 ERA. This is his bugaboo, though, 1.4 WHIP. I mean, he was just walking the world last year. So 7.6 K per 9, which is not – it's fine, but the 124 Ks to 63 walks, that's disgusting. That's really gross. That's just too many free passes, because then free pass, base hit, dinger, that's 3 runs and 3 pitches. So I don't know if I really – he got around it last year. I'm amazed he had a 3.73, but his xERA was higher than that. So his expected ERA was not that. And that makes sense to me with a 1.4 WHIP. 1.4 WHIP guys are usually like the Rockies guys with a 5.3 ERA. So Javier Assad does not inspire confidence for me, but I still think the Cubs want him to be in the rotation more than Colin Ray. But I think once he tweaked his oblique, that was kind of the end of the discussion.
Right.
And no one else. Was anyone else truly battling for that 5th spot, Tim? I was tracking just Javier Assad and Colin Ray, but
not really. It felt like that. Like this was the rotation as we kind of saw it coming in and what's going to happen. Assad really is like that only other potential, and his age is the right number. But beyond that, when you look at the amount of walks that he gives up, and maybe that's why they're bringing all these guys with who don't walk guys around him and go, hey, look at all these other guys. You need to do what they're doing.
Do this.
Be like them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll be successful if you do that.
That's it. Pitch to contact, man. It's a thing. Another couple guys they had in camp at least throwing starts, which I believe are probably going to be heading to AAA. But Ben Brown and Jordan Wicks, those are kind of guys that are mentioned, but I don't really think they're legitimate. I don't know. They don't have that much that looks like they're really kicking down the door to take one of these spots away.
Not yet.
If anything, they're just the same thing as Colin Ray or Matthew Boyd.
Yeah.
They're just younger versions. So
yeah, I'd agree with that.
Younger versions, same stuff.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to add on the starting pitcher, Tim, before we head to the bullpen?
I think I've made it known my feelings that
sufficiently scared everybody out there.
Exactly. I'm sorry, but I'm just being honest here.
Hey, we're being transparent with all of our fans.
That's it.
Trying to bring the truth, what we think.
We spit it straight here. We spit it straight. All right, so let's go to the bullpen. So they made some additions this year, and I think the main one is Ryan Presley, and he's going to be the closer. And I got a little soft spot for Ryan Presley because he's a former Twin, and he wasn't really our closer at the time, but he was a heck of a reliever. He was awesome.
Yeah.
Then he went to Houston and became a closer, but he is now 36, so he is no young chicken anymore.
He is not.
Only had 4 saves last year in 56 innings, 3.49 ERA, 1.34 WHIP. Again, passable numbers. I don't like the high WHIP, especially as a reliever. It means you're walking too many. But 9.2 Ks per nine, I can get behind that. And 58 strikeouts and only 18 walks last year. So it's not too bad. Again, 3.22 rate. I can live with that. Anything over 3, I'm good. 4, I love. But he's a 2-time All-Star, but he is trending the wrong way in every category that matters. So Ks per nine down, his strikeout to walk rate down, his whip's going up, his hits per nine's going up, line drive percentage is going up, K percentage is going down, walk percentage is going up. I'm like, sounds like the wrong guy to come bring in to be my closer when we just talked about kind of the frailties of the starting staff.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Maybe he frightens me a little bit for all those reasons you mentioned. And, I've been thinking about that too. I'm like, okay, so this is the guy that's going to come in and lock this stuff down? Okay.
This is your high leverage guy.
They get to the 9th with the lead, and this is the guy?
Yeah. We'll see. Again, I think they could have possibly done better than that, but at least it was something.
Yeah, but now that we've been through a lot of these teams, they were getting some of these dudes for nothing. So, like Hoffman came from Philly and went to Toronto, got him for like a bag of potato chips. I mean, there's just so much talent out there that you could have gotten for a bag of potato chips and maybe thrown some Cracker Jack.
There you
and
go.
You could have gotten like a legit arm.
I know.
And instead, they get this old classic rock who's done it before, and there's something to be said for that. But you already have Justin Turner. I don't need someone to teach my arms back there, too. I need someone to actually shut the door.
Yeah.
Strike people out. Don't walk them. I don't know. So I'm questionable about that signing.
I'm with you.
But there's the person I thought they were going to keep at closer, and he's the one that was closing out some games last year. So Porter Hodge, right-handed pitcher, 24. Again, kind of the age you want your guys to be when you're looking at the bullpen. 9 saves last year, 43 innings, 1.88 ERA, 0.884 WHIP, and he had a 10.9 K per nine, which that's what I'm talking about. 52 to 19 K to walk. So again, the ratio's a little bit like 2.74 is not phenomenal, but man, everything else plays. So I think even though we talked about Presley getting the early saves, I don't think it's going to take much to put Presley back into a setup role and have Porter Hodge be that closer. Have you heard anything similar in camp?
I like Porter Hodge, and he's looked good. And I've noticed him and thought this is potentially one of those guys who has the ability to come up and where you're not looking at him because they get Presley, whatever. But this is a kid that I like age-wise and where he's at, and he just looks like he's hitting that, stride and confidence. He's looked great this spring, and I don't even know if that's by the numbers. That's just from me, like looking at him going, this kid's going to be a good pitcher. So I would not be surprised a bit if he ends up, usurping Presley.
Yeah, the eyeball test, he's passing it.
Exactly.
He looks pretty good.
Yep.
And then some of the other guys they brought in, or have already. So Ryan Brazier, I think they did bring him in if I remember correctly.
Yep.
Yeah, so trade with the Dodgers. Yep, they got him. Brazier's been around a long time. Again, age 37. I mean, we kind of have a theme here, and I'm going to get to another guy who's older than that in just a second. But Ryan Brazier, 37, 28 innings, 3.54 ERA, .964 WHIP, 8K per nine, and he had 25 strikeouts to 5 walks. He missed a lot of time last year with a calf injury, but when he played, he's really good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with those numbers. So nothing really wrong with it. Again, it's a crusty veteran, knows how to pitch in probably a high leverage situation. Well, another old guy that's a crusty veteran in these situations.
Yeah, I mean,
who knows? And another guy they brought in. Let's go even older, Tim. Caleb Thielbar, left-handed pitcher, 38. They're just from the Twins, and I like him. Well, I didn't like him last year though.
Yeah.
And so after his worst year with the Twins, the Cubbies say, "I got a golden chalice right here. Just take a couple sips from this, choose wisely, and let's see if it works." But a 5.32 ERA last year, a 1.5 WHIP, negative WAR. So me pitching would have been 0.6 better, but I guess he still struck some people out, and he's left-handed. We've kind of hinted on some of these other shows for other teams. Sometimes just being lefty and crafty, that's enough to keep you in the league. And looking at this, here it is. But when I see a guy who had a career worst year, ground ball rate up, fastball or fly ball rate was down, that's the good things, right?
Yeah.
But line drive percentage below the career average, he could bounce back. So there's all these negatives on all his stats, but he threw more ground balls and gave up less fly balls. So I don't know if they were all just seeing eye singles or what, but this guy has a chance to bounce back and be relatively good. And looking at the bullpen, not a lot of lefties. So he's going to be out there a lot.
I have not been super impressed by him this spring. So, again, that makes me nervous because, they're kind of banking on him here. And, again, the age and everything. Yeah. And last year, I look at the numbers and I'm kind of like, okay. We're rolling with that, I guess. So, but I hope he has that bounce back year. Crafty lefty, veteran, crusty guy. Let's do this.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna have to be, I think. And I don't know. I'm not sold until I see it. And
I'm not either.
You sound like you've been seeing it and you haven't seen it yet.
No.
The two other guys in the bullpen that should be getting some play and I think have some upside, Nate Pearson and Tyson Miller, both right-handers, 28 and 29 respectively, both pitched in the 60s innings last year. I think Tyson Miller had a better year, so he had a 2.32 ERA and a .806 WHIP. That's awesome. 54 to 11 strikeout to walk. So a 4.91. And again, love that. So he was filling in as a setup guy to Hodge last year, but they added some people, right? So I don't know if I mean, he probably will bounce down. So if it's Presley actually in the closing role and then Porter Hodge, it'll probably be Tyson Miller. If they have their beautiful, perfect 7, 8, 9, that's probably how it would work out. But I think he's got a lot of upside. And I think he also has potential, barring some weirdness, he could get some high leverage situations and potentially some save opportunities. So Tyson Miller is someone I think to be at least keep your eyeball on for fantasy, and then real life, just kind of know what's going on. He's someone I think the team trusts. Do you have the belief that Counsell would put him in kind of wherever?
I felt good about what I've seen from him this spring, and that he has the potential to do the kind of things you're talking about, high leverage situations, potentially could end up, getting some saves here and there. I like how he's kind of developing. Again, he's of that age where he might just be really kind of hitting his stride. So we'll see. But he's looked good this spring.
Yeah, that's good. I like watching pitch. I thought he looks really good, and I think he's going to have the opportunities. And again, I'd rather take my chance on the 29-year-old throwing really well over a guy that's, late 30s. That's not usually where we want to have your pitching staff at. Exactly. The other guy, so Nate Pearson, he's got the pedigree. So for any of the baseball fans out there that were drafting Toronto prospects back in the day, he was the first-round pick for the Toronto and always at the top of their prospect list year after year after year. But he's always hurt. Always hurt. And he finally got up there, and he actually did all right with Toronto, but then he got hurt. So he it's just kind of where he is now. Now he's a bullpen arm, but he's not that old though. He's only 28.
Which,
And
yeah,
after he got
surprising.
traded last year in 19 games, he had 26 innings, 23 Ks, only to 4 walks. So again, over a 5 rate when he was after the trade, 2.73 ERA and a .987. And he's got that pedigree. So Nate Pearson, I think, is another person that's going to get a lot of high leverage situations in the bullpen. And with this starting staff, he might get quite a bit of action back there. So have you seen much from Nate Pearson this year?
I haven't actually seen much of him. I think he's only pitched once in a game that I've announced so far.
Oh, really? Okay.
So, and that can just be by rotational. You know, he could be pitching when they're away, because I obviously just do the games at Sloan. I don't do every Cactus League game. Travel from one spot to the other. Yeah, no. So I haven't really had a chance to see him as much. So I don't have as much to offer on him.
Yeah, so I'm hopeful that he'll be pretty good arm back there. So I think the bullpen overall. So again, Presley, I've got question marks. Tealbar, I've got question marks. But Hodge, Pearson, Miller, I like those 3.
I do
too. And Ryan Brazier, again, he's an old guy, but he's an old effective guy. And Presley, an old effective guy. I don't know. I'm not too worried if they have to get to that situation because they have enough arms.
Right.
I think can get them through it.
Yep.
And I don't know. I'm not too worried about that part. If anything, the bullpen does not scare me that much. When we go into the next part, so we're talking about all the old guys. Who's going to replace these dudes? So on the prospect side of things, I was amazed to see that they have 7 of the top 96 prospects on the MLB list. And they have just a good lineup. There's like no room for them right now.
Right.
So they've got Matt Shaw, who's obviously going to be in there. So really we'll say 6 because he's probably already got the starting job.
Yeah.
But the next guy's up, and they're all in AAA. So that's the thing. So Cade Horton, Owen Casey, Moises Ballesteros, James Trantos, Kevin Alcantara, Jefferson Rojas, all these guys. So Rojas probably, I don't think he was in camp. So he's high A. He may not have been at big league camp this year.
He wasn't in camp this year.
Yeah, so the other guys all were.
Yep, the other guys were.
Of these guys, I want to hear your take. Who should we be excited about? So Cubs fans, when they hear all those names, who should we be excited about coming up that you've seen play?
Well, Kevin Alcantara is 6'6". Now he's a thin kind of tall, but yeah, he's got some really good tools. That kid, it's just a matter of right now, there's not a spot, and I do think he probably just needs a little bit more seasoning in AAA and just kind of a little more hunger, but he's looked great this spring. He's a talented kid. He's probably my number one. Ballesteros has looked fantastic too. Like I say, these young guys, and again, I'll see them all Saturday because they're all gonna be playing. I've seen the roster. Right. Yeah. I think all those guys are on the roster for the Cubs. I have to actually check out the Angels roster. Yeah, Trantos has been good, looking like his bat is going to play. Who else who else did you mention?
So Cade Horton, he's a right-handed pitcher.
Yep. Yeah, he just pitched.
Owen Casey, outfield.
Yeah, Casey's been kind of up and coming for a couple of years now too, and it's like, well, where are you going to put all these guys? There's
right.
People are being blocked at certain points, and you'll have to make decisions. And possibly, if the Cubs decide they need, I don't know, something, and they have to make a trade, you do have some valuable pieces that
trade chips.
Yeah, exactly. So
hypothetically, if they need a starting pitcher because one of theirs gets injured, maybe
or
a lefty,
is it too old and crusty.
So when I kind of go through these and what the kind of the guys that know what they're talking about are saying. So Cade Horton apparently has SP1 upside, so they don't always say that. So the fact they put that in his profile, that means something. Mm-hmm. He was a 2023 Cubs minor league pitcher of the year. He's had a lot of injuries, though. That seems to kind of be his thing. He can't stay healthy. So we'll see. But Cade Horton, hopefully he pitches that game. That'd be kind of nice to see him in there, see what he does.
Yep.
Owen Casey, outfielder. He's a left-handed bat, which is kind of nice for the lineup.
Nice. Yep.
So he's a third prospect for the Cubs. So he's a 22-year-old that's just absolutely murdered the ball at every level. So they believe he's got 30 home run upside. But his issue, as with most guys that are doing that, is the K rate.
Yeah.
So he has a really high K rate. But with him, unlike some of those dudes, he has a super good walk rate too. So 14% walk rate through the minors, which is exceptional.
Yeah.
So that's kind of something to keep an eyeball on. Ballesteros, which you talked about earlier. So he's a catcher first base, but apparently he is slower than a sloth. And he absolutely rakes, but he almost needs to hit it into the fences to get to first. But the thing is, he's also won the Cubs minor league baseball player of the year 2 years in a row. And his comp is Alejandro Kirk. So if you heard our Toronto episode earlier, he's just a round ball. So this guy seems to be a round ball who mashes the bejesus out of the ball, and it takes him a very long time to get to first. Much less getting around all the bases.
He is exactly that.
Like they have to have an oxygen tank in the dugout if he actually got all the way around.
Yeah.
And James Trantos, so I've heard good things about him as well. So he's got the highest hit tool out of all these prospects. So a 65 on the 20/80 scale. He's a 300 hitter in the minors. His comps are to Luis Ariz with more pop. I mean, that is a good comp since Luis Ariz has won 3 straight batting titles.
Yeah.
If you can get that plus not get 3 home runs a year, but get, 10 to 15, that's pretty awesome. So yes. Nico Horner needs to get healthy quick. And I don't know. I mean, it looks like he's playing second base and outfield. So it looks like there's certainly some places he could fall into. But that's another one to keep an eyeball on, especially if he's playing this weekend, Tim. Give us an update on that guy. And then Kevin Alcantara, which you also talked about. He's at 6'6" right-hander. He takes up the whole box. He might be skinny, but he takes it all up. So he's very fast too, but I think the problem is his ground ball rate. So he hits the ball on the ground a lot. If they want him to start elevating it more.
Yeah.
And I think if he can do that, he's going to start really he'll take that next step, and we may never hear another thing about him being in the minor leagues. He'll be in the majors doing 30-30.
There's another guy that was up in camp, and that I'm just feeling the Cubs feel really high on him, but I really didn't know much about him other than his tremendous size, is a kid named Ivan Brettauer. Have you heard about this kid?
Haven't heard that name.
Yeah, I mean, he's like Aaron Judge size type of dude out there playing in the right field and just with seeming like a lot of power. And anyhow, he kind of came out of nowhere. And the way his name is spelled, it was hard to figure out how it was pronounced, which of course is something I have to do.
I was going to say, that's a problem for you. You got to try and dig this up.
But nobody knew who he was. But then, I read one article about him, and they're like, hey, this is really a kid to watch for. So I want to do a little more research on him. He went back down a long time ago, but looks like an interesting prospect. But at least from his size standpoint, I don't know anything more than that. So I'm going to dive into that, find out.
So what's his name again?
Ivan Brettauer, but it's
Ivan Brettauer. All right.
Brettauer is how he wants it pronounced. That much I know.
No, that's good. You got the inside scoop for us. We'll be able to at least say it right. So that'll be good. And then the last prospect they got in the top 100, Jefferson Rojas. So he's a 19-year-old they just got last year, I believe. High A. I think he's going to stay in high A at least the beginning of the year, but he'll probably easily go to double A this season if he plays well. Solid glove, good bat. I don't know if he's necessarily profiles to be like a 20-20, 30-30 guy, but he seems to at least be a solid Major League Baseball potential player.
Yeah.
So that is the full rundown of all of our Cubs players. So we got the lineup, pitching, bullpen. I think we feel very comfortable saying the lineup looks strong, defense looks strong, starting pitching looks good up top. Then we start getting some question marks, which all could be good. Again, Jameson Taillon, third overall pick-ish, I think. Matthew Boyd has shown it. Colin Ray is passable. They don't really have anyone past that. Bullpen, Ryan Presley's done it before, has been awesome, but aging, right? They got some young arms, though, that are really good. With Nate Pearson, Tyson Miller, I think those guys can really do a good job back there. Again, from fantasy perspective, keep your eyeballs on those.
Right.
Because Porter Hodge, Nate Pearson, Tyson Miller may well be falling into the closer role, or at least a high leverage if your league does hold.
Yep.
They could be some good ones to look at. And then for dynasty leagues, again, Matt Shaw's probably up there. You're going to have to draft him in your regular draft. But Cade Horton, Owen Casey, Ballesteros, I don't know where you put a slug that goes 1 mile an hour, but they'll probably find something for him. James Trantos, Kevin Alcantara, keep the lookout for those guys. And let's go back and finish up. We'll round out. So the over-under, 85.5. Tim, I'm going to let you give us your take because it's going to be totally objective with no bias whatsoever.
Well,
where do you think our Cubs?
I try to be.
And usually it's more pessimistic. I
try to think that I try not to be the total Cubs homer, just the way. So I want to say that, that 85 games seems about spot on. And if things go the right way, we could, be 87, maybe 90, if they go the right way. And if they don't, if their arms break down and the old crusties don't do, and the guys, the other Imanaga and Steele have let down years, then things could get sadly, go the other way. So it's but it's interesting because there is so much talent, and there is these arms and these guys who have histories of doing well at different times in their careers. So it's just one of those years where I'm kind of looking forward to just to see what happens, just can they do it, So that's how I feel about it anyhow. The potential's there to go both ways. I know that's hedging my bet, but that's how I feel.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, Prue, what do you think?
I'm kind of optimistic on the lineup side. I think these guys will score runs for sure.
Yep. They will do that.
There's a couple guys that are getting older, but not too old. Like they'll still contribute and likely stay healthy. I am concerned on the starting pitching, but you never know. I mean, those guys could hold up. I'm going to tend to lean under just because of we've done the Brewers review, we've done the Cardinals review, we've done the Pirates review. We haven't done the Reds yet, but they do have a fairly strong division, I feel like, overall. And I'm going to lean just under, like maybe 82 wins.
That seems fair.
Yeah.
I'm at 2%, 1% now. So if I just magically disappear, you know what happens.
That's all good.
It would take me a while to grab the charger and do all that.
That's all good.
So
I think I'm right where you're at, Tim. I think they're going to be right around 85 wins. I can certainly see another 83 win season, though. Yeah. The offense is great. The defense is great. I just don't believe in the pitching. Yep. And that's the end of the day where I'm at. I think they're going to be under, and that's kind of what we got. All right. So I think that's going to wrap us up. Thank you for joining us, Tim. Appreciate it. And that's our Cubs. In the meantime, like, follow, subscribe, and we'll keep on doing these things for you. Till next time.
Stay shrewd.